And as always on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm joined by, well, my co-host. Listen, folks, if Alberta were a carnival, this is the 5 coupon ride. I am talking about the she-devil with a sword, the Khaleesi of Northern Alberta, Sheila Gunn Reid. How you doing there, Sheila?
Oh, David, I'm so much better now that you have given me a proper introduction. Learning from home or home learning or whatever the heck the school system calls it around here is really trying. It's really getting on my nerves because I don't have landlines into my log cabin. It was built without them, so everything we do, like Wi-Fi wise, is like wireless. And it's trying. When everybody is on like a Google Meets Zoom call, I work on the internet and we're trying to Skype. The frustration is real. So I appreciate your kind introduction. It's the boost that I needed today. Boy, I'm at my limit. Like I'm at the rev limiter with this home learning stuff.
Well, Sheila, we both have issues because I think your issue is your lovely daughter. She is, I guess, having a Zoom lesson for school because, of course, children are the hardest hit demographic of the Wuhan virus. They're just dropping like flies, aren't they? No, they're not actually. They're quite invulnerable. So when you have 2 Zoom things happening, that kind of degrades the quality of the transmission. But you are coming through loud and clear. Meanwhile, here, Sheila, I got to tell you, if it looks like I'm straining to listen to you, it's because our reporter from Montreal, Yankee, who's now wandered into the broadcast booth, his voice is on some kind of tonal spectrum that it actually permeates the soundproof walls of the studio. I can't hear myself think. He's now quiet. I'm looking at him texting something, so he's now distracted. But it's kind of like the mutant Banshee from the X-Men that can destroy things with his voice. I think we have an actual super-powered rebel here at Rebel News. I just wish he would use his superpowers on the bad guys, not try to make me deaf by talking 2 rooms away from us.
We all love Yankee, but he also likes to talk, and his voice, you're right. There's something about it that, like there's those big satellite dishes and all they do is broadcast into deep space to see if the aliens will hear us. We don't need that with Yankee. He just lets her fly.
Well, how do you feel about that, Sheila? I know Bill Gates, of all people, he's dead set against that because basically he feels that the only species that would be intelligent enough to receive those transmissions would be a species of alien that would be far beyond us, and we've basically left cookie trails to the planet Earth, and I guess we'd get conquered, and I suppose at the end of the day, what would be the role of humanity? I guess we could run human-run casinos or something like that. But what do you think about that? Should we be sending out those messages in a bottle?
I'm not sure. However, I don't think the aliens, if they saw us, they'd want to stop by and say hello, at least not these days. And I realize why Bill Gates doesn't want aliens to find us, because right now Bill Gates is at the top of the food chain, right? Like he's richer than God. He thinks he controls the absolute world. And if the aliens come along and they're more powerful than him, I can see why he wouldn't want them to show up.
You know what? That is a fantastic analysis, Sheila. It is his own selfish self-interest, isn't it? So when the aliens say the proverbial, take me to your leader, and we all point at Bill Gates, suddenly maybe it might not be a good thing to be one of the richest men on the planet. Although I think that divorce settlement is going to have something to do with that tally in the weeks to come.
Yeah, I'm watching that divorce like an absolute train crash. Like the hearing the news that he used to have like wild and swinging like weird parties, that's the last thing I would think about Bill Gates. But then it's always the last person you think, right? Like that's how those rich and famous people get away with their weirdo behavior is because they're nerds, wealthy nerds. And so they can sort of buy everybody's silence or whatever. Now, we should tell everybody what we're doing here because it is 5 minutes into the show. My Skype feed on my side, Justin, is currently frozen. So if we throw to clips, I won't be able to watch them, but I can listen to them. And we should tell everybody what we're doing. This is the Rebel Daily News live stream. It used to just be on Friday. It used to just be hosted by Ezra Levant. Pandemic hit. CBC said, oh, too scary out there for us to do news. And they decided to do less work than ever with more money than ever. Go figure. And so they sort of stopped doing their like local news coverage. We think all news is local, especially during this pandemic. And there's more things to talk about than ever. And some of the best ways to talk about that is live as it happens. And so instead of just having the live stream on Fridays, we expanded it to all 5 work days. David and I host we host Tuesdays and Thursdays. Ezra hosts Monday, Wednesday, Friday, which I think is a startling accomplishment considering he runs Canada's largest independent news network and still has time to do, 3 hours of live TV a week in between running everything else. So anyway, when David and I are holding down the fort on Tuesdays and Thursdays, gives us a chance to interact with each other. Used to give us a chance to interact with our viewers. However, that's a little less frequent these days since YouTube took away something called a super chat. YouTube used to allow for people to donate to the work that we do here completely willingly, unlike what Justin Trudeau forces you to do with the mainstream media, and that's just take your tax money and give it to them for stuff that you would never willingly consume. But they took that away from us when they completely demonetized us. Used to be able to leave us a super chat. Can't do that anymore. And so we thought, you know what, YouTube, you don't like us. We don't like you. You're kind of a good place for people to find us. But if people find us here, we're going to do what I'm about to do and say, don't watch us here. Why don't you try watching us on Rumble? Try watching us on Odyssey and on superu.net. Now, superu.net is pretty free speechy. It's brand new. And there's a live chat going over there so you can do the things that you used to do on YouTube, and that's talk back and forth with each other and build a little Rebel News live stream community there. If you're watching us on Odyssey, you can leave us something called Hyper Chat. I think it's what it's called. And that's using Odyssey's own library cryptocurrency. And if you're watching us on Rumble, you can watch us live, and then that's it. Because we'll have to upload the stream later on in the day. I think that's what we've been doing lately. So on Rumble, you can watch us live right now, and then that's it. It doesn't record live, but we'll upload the stream later on in the day. So those are the places that you can find us right now. So if you're watching on YouTube, maybe take the off-ramp and head over to one of those other platforms, superu.net, Rumble, or Odyssey. Thank you.
Yeah, remember the old days, Sheila, when YouTube used to send us these beautiful plaques we have on our on display in our boardroom, congratulating us for another benchmark in number of viewers, and now it's it's kind of like Bill and Melinda Gates. They don't kind of like us, and we don't like what they're doing to us. So it's so sad. One day when these years are chronicled as a part of history, there'll be much to say about how Silicon Valley, these tech giants that once upon a time, I guess going back to the genesis of social media maybe 15 years ago or so, reached out to everybody. Hey, we're all about free speech. Hey, come over to us. And we did. And others did too. And it didn't matter what your political affiliation was. And then, Sheila, they got to such a critical mass where suddenly they could pick and choose and say, no, we don't like you. Don't like you. You're deplatformed. You're demonetized. What hypocrites. We really fell for a colossal version of bait and switch when it came to free speech, didn't we?
Yeah, we sure did. All these big tech oligarchs, they operate as like little microstates, but they're not even that small. With their own set of rules and governances, and they promised us the opportunity to exist in the digital public square. And instead, all they did was monetize our information, sell it, and then kick us off.
Unbelievable. Well, unlike the CBC, we don't think there's nothing to report. We're not staying in our basements covering the news via the internet. And I think, Sheila, we should begin the show with, I think two of the hottest stories right now are indeed coming out of your province, and that is Arthur Pawlowski and, of course, Mr. Scott at the Whistle Stop Cafe, and you're there at ground zero. What's going on right now? Because these stories are changing by the day, sometimes by the hour.
Yes, actually, the Whistle Stop, lawyers for the Whistle Stop are in court right now as we speak. That's Chad Williamson from Williamson Law. What he's doing is he's arguing for the overturning of an injunction that Alberta Health Services got against Chris Scott, Glenn Carrott of United We Roll, and the rest of us, unnamed Jane and John Does, restraining us from participating, organizing, or promoting what the government Orwellianly calls illegal public gatherings, which in Alberta means anything larger than 5, and those 5 must be compliant. So social distancing, masks, the whole works. And that was designed to quell public protests in Alberta against the lockdown. So basically, the government went and restrained our civil liberties, preventing us from questioning the government's ongoing lockdown on our lives. And it's the same restraining order that led to the arrest and imprisonment of Pastor Art Pawlowski, and it's also the same restraining order that led to the arrest and imprisonment for 3 days of Chris Scott for holding a 1,500-person strong protest in Mirror, Alberta. So in Alberta, it's not just fines anymore if you break the lockdown. It is the potential for going to jail for contempt of court. That this isn't a bigger story in the mainstream media just speaks to what a bunch of absolute disgusting locker downers these people are. They don't care about free speech. They don't care about civil liberties. They don't care about peaceful assembly. They're pro-locker downers. And they don't seem to care that the rights of 4.5 million completely innocent Albertans were stripped away in secret by a judge last Thursday.
Sheila, it also speaks to the hypocrisy on steroids that we're seeing, because in your home province, in certain cities, and indeed around the world last summer, we had gatherings far exceeding 1,500 people, but it was for Black Lives Matter, in which case, and you know, it's kind of funny when you see your former Premier Rachel Notley turning into a COVID Karen, decrying these anti-lockdown protests. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think she attended Black Lives Matter protests, and no, there weren't tickets handed out. Rather, law enforcement, including chiefs of police, bent the knee. And like I said, in gatherings far greater of 1,500, please, Sheila, I'm trying to understand the science. I'm only saying this half jokingly. Is the Wuhan virus some kind of molecule that has the intelligence to realize, you know, for the greater good, for social and racial justice, I will not infect thousands of people gathering together in a park, not social distancing, but ooh, those anti-lockdown people, they're zealots. I'm going to infect them. I mean, what is it?
Rachel Notley's MLAs spoke at the Black Lives Matter protest.
Yeah.
Like, they were keynote speakers at the Black Lives Matter protest. And that was back sort of in the height of the pandemic when really we didn't really know.
Yeah.
A lot of people had it figured out by then, but you know, like, let's give people the benefit of the doubt. A lot of people didn't actually know how this thing was transmitting, and we only had a couple months worth of data at the time, but it was perfectly fine then for Rachel Notley's MLAs to go out into crowds of several thousand to protest Black Lives Matter. And, you know, Sheila... Now, I was just going to say, I should note, a couple weekends ago, apparently there was a super spreader event here in Alberta, and I'm talking about the illegal rodeo. Well, we're almost 2 weeks out from that, and we don't have a single case of coronavirus linked to Ty Northcott's rodeo. And yet, earlier this week, he, his wife, and his business face a court summonses for holding that illegal rodeo. and they could face up to, in the case of the business, a $100,000 fine.
Unbelievable. And of course, this does not get reported in the state-funded media, which is now basically almost everybody in the mainstream media. The CBC, the Calgary Herald, the Edmonton Journal, they're not going out of their way to say, hey, there's no there in terms of transmissions of the Wuhan virus at these rodeos. They don't report that, do they, Sheila?
No, they don't. We had to learn that through the Western Standard. Justin, I don't know if you have a clip of, I think it's Chad. He's Chad Williamson, Chris Scott's lawyer. Maybe we can roll that because he really explains what he's trying to do in court today and why he thinks this injunction against our civil liberties needs to be immediately overturned. Because I think that's also a very important point to make here. This order restraining the civil liberties of 4.5 million Albertans. Think about that. That's a huge, drastic step. It was obtained in secret on Thursday. Lawyers for Alberta Health Services went before Associate Chief Justice Rook in Calgary, and they didn't include the lawyer for the two named individuals in the restraining order, even though earlier they had email communications with Chad, and Chad has argued against Alberta Health Services lawyers in court. So they know the guy exists. They know how to get a hold of him. But they sneakily went before a judge and got this emergency injunction against all of our civil liberties. So, Justin, if you do have that clip of my video that's going up today where Chad, who is just, no wonder Alberta Health Services lawyers sought that injunction in secret, because after you see this, you're like, yeah, I don't want to go up against that guy either. So, Justin, maybe you can roll that.
We're gearing up for a complex but critical procedural application tomorrow on behalf of Chris and the Whistle Stop. We'll be asking the court to set aside the order granted last week without notice to us, without representations by counsel, and without disclosure to the court that Chris was represented by a lawyer when the order was granted. We have now put evidence before the court that we sent correspondence to Alberta Health Services the day before the application was heard, that we represented Chris, and that we were requesting that further dialogue with Alberta Health Services be put to our immediate attention. What hangs in the balance tomorrow is whether or not the government has the ability to sidestep counsel altogether, go into court ex parte on the pretense of public health to get an order making your activities illegal and arrestable without notifying your lawyer, without that lawyer being able to make arguments to the court, or even making full and frank disclosure to the court that you're represented by a lawyer, so that the court has all of the salient information put before it prior to granting the government wide-reaching powers to arrest and jail people. If this order is allowed to stand, we are gravely concerned that it will give the government the ability to completely remove opposing counsel from the picture in seeking orders against Albertans. The very bedrock of democracy, the rule of law, and the principles of fairness and justice may be at stake here. This has been a grueling battle, and without the help of Albertans that they've given to Chris, there would be limited opposition to these efforts to truncate fundamental rights by the government. Wish us luck.
Chad's in court fighting for Chris and Glenn, but he's also there fighting for the rest of us in this province, the rest of us innocent people who had our own government seek and win a secret restraining order against our right to criticize the government in public.
By the way, Sheila, before you add into that, I just want to say how lovely that Rebel News sweatshirt looked on you. And better yet, if you share my opinion, folks, you can go to the Rebel News store and buy something just like that, right?
That's right. rebelnewsstore.com and use the coupon code Sheila10 for 10% off.
Shameless.
Yeah, so I think Chad pretty well summed it up there, that you have to think about the implications here. The government can go in secret and render the things that you are doing illegal and then take you to jail for that, and you don't get a say in any of it. I think that's shocking, and it demands that this needs closer examination. And the thing is, if Chad is unsuccessful today, it's not over.
No.
He said he's going to take this all the way to the Court of Appeal and keep going and keep going. And it's going to be enormously expensive, like tens, possibly $100,000. But I mean, think about what the civil liberties of 4.5 million Albertans are worth. Yeah. And so if people want to help Chad, as he is right now in court fighting for the rights of Albertans to express their discontent with the government, please go to fightthefines.com and throw in a couple of bucks there. I don't think people truly understand what this means. This means that if you have 6 people outside at a birthday party, it's not just a fine anymore. You're going to jail for contempt of court. That's what this comes down to. Illegal public gatherings isn't just a protest, although that's what this was designed to target. It is any non-compliant public gathering. You got 6 people at the park, you're standing a little too close, straight to jail. It's insane.
Well, this is absolutely scary. And you know, Sheila, I'm not a lawyer, but given the shenanigans that Chris Scott is going through right now, I would label this as abuse of regulatory authority. Yeah. That this is downright abusive. This is beyond the perimeters of the rules of a court. I think there's a great lawsuit in the works. But like I said, I'm not a lawyer, but that's the way I see it, because this is despicable. They're not even playing fair anymore, Sheila.
No, they're not playing fair, and they're not even involving you. They're just doing things that render your livelihood illegal. And they think about this. They can come and chain up your business. Yep. Cut your small town off from the only gas station, the only convenience store, close a campground for some unforeseen reason. This is what they also did. And if you're mad about it, sit down and shut up. You don't even have the opportunity to tell the government, stop what you're doing to us. We don't like it. You can't even do that because now you'll go to jail.
And again, because the buck stops there, it is Premier Jason Kenney. What is he thinking? And some news this morning, Sheila, very significant on that front. I believe the UCP caucus chair resigned and called upon Premier Kenney to resign. That's a bombshell.
Yeah, I'll just bring that up on my phone here because I can't see it on the screen. But yeah, Todd Loewen, rural MLA. He posted a Facebook message 10 hours ago, so just before midnight. I guess when you're gonna commit political suicide, you might want to do it in the darkest parts of the night. But anyway, Todd Loewen, he said, I have sent the following letter to Premier Kenney and caucus informing them that I will be stepping down as UCP caucus chair. So this is a important guy in caucus. Due to persistent issues of dysfunction within the government, I desperately want to save the movement we have all built together. And I'm committed to staying. But I believe we must remove the primary source of this dysfunction, Premier Jason Kenney.
Wow. Those are fireworks. I mean, that cannot go ignored. And, you know, I got to think in the background, somewhere in the legislature, Miss Notley must be cackling like the Wicked Witch of the West. She probably can't imagine her good fortune, because the way I see it, and of course we're a couple of years away from election in Alberta, and that is indeed an eternity in political timelines, but I see the seeds of destruction being sown to perhaps allow the NDP incredibly to seize power by going up the middle once again, Sheila. I think Kenney is playing with fire. I think this idea that he wants a new base, which he is allegedly quoted as saying, because I don't know, the old base, those rural folks and those motocross fans and the rodeo people and agriculture, they're so passé. What has gone into this guy's head?
You know, I'll just read from Todd Loewen's statement because this is really something else. He says, Albertans have lost trust in the leadership of our government and are no longer willing to extend us any benefit of the doubt on most issues. This makes it difficult for our members to enact our policy agenda while effectively representing the concerns and interests of our constituents. The caucus dysfunction we are presently experiencing is a direct result of your leadership. Messaging from your government has been contradictory, confusing, and needlessly inflammatory. Alberta now faces a troubling economic crisis with historically high unemployment, dying small businesses, and staggering levels of debt. The people have lost trust in this government because you have not brought needed balance and reason to the discussion. Albertans and our UCP party members deserve better. Albertans perceive our government as out of touch and arrogant, and they expect our caucus to bring their issues of concern to the government. Many of us have tried to do so repeatedly, only to be ignored and dismissed. When the Premier chooses not to listen to caucus, is it any wonder why the people choose to stop listening to the government? Our supporters and those I represent can no longer tolerate this. These folks have not abandoned the principles and values of the UCP, but they have abandoned you specifically. Personally, I have helped build the Conservative movement in this province for 13 years and have served faithfully as a public service. I still uphold the principles and values under which I was elected. And then he goes on to say, I believe I still represent the will of the party's grassroots and wish to make it clear that I am not leaving the party. My constituents overwhelmingly believe in a strong, united party, and I must represent that belief. Along with so many Albertans, our understanding was that we in the UCP had united around our shared principles, integrity, and common sense approach to governing. In short, an Alberta strong and free. We did not unite around blind loyalty to one man. And while you promoted unity, it is clear that unity is falling apart. I know that many Albertans, including myself, no longer have confidence in your leadership. I thank you for your service, but I'm asking that you resign so that we can begin to put the province back together again. Sincerely, Todd Lowen.
Well, bravo for Mr. Lowen for
taking
a principled stance. And that note, that letter is absolutely shocking to me, Sheila, only from the point of view that usually when a politician writes a letter, there's things that are open to some nuance. There's a whole lot of $3 words. Man, there's no nuance there. That is as harsh as it can possibly get. And I have to say, Sheila, going back to 2019, when Mr. Kenney came to power with a big majority government, did anyone ever foresee that in 2 short years, this would be the outcome? I mean, people resigning, dissension in the party being labeled by its own chair as dysfunctional. To me, it's like I'm living in an alternative universe.
Yeah, it's pretty strange. In Alberta, it's not unusual to see us fracture our Conservative movement when we think it is not being true to Conservative values. It happens all the time. It happened with Reform. It happened with Wild Rose. So it's not unusual. I just didn't think it would happen this quickly.
Yes.
Because it's the natural inclination of a Conservative party to move towards the center. And that's because all forces are pulling it to the left. The mainstream media, the federal government, those special interest groups that are part of the government, like public sector unions, they're all pulling the Conservative movement to the center because they're on the left. And the grassroots is always on the right, and they pull right, and then it gets to a point where it breaks apart. I just didn't think it would happen this fast. I honestly thought maybe we had 10 years. I didn't think it would happen so quickly. Like I said the other day, we're in Alison Redford country a lot faster than I thought we would get there.
Oh, it's unbelievable. But you know what? Going back to what we were discussing before, Sheila, the hypocrisy of certain demonstrations being targeted and others being basically affirmed. As you mentioned, if you gather in a group of 6 or more, you could face jail time. I wonder, as the weather gets warmer and the social justice warriors emerge from their grandmother's basements, when they start to stage Black Lives Matter protests again outside, say, the Edmonton legislature, do they get rounded up in paddy wagons? Do they get charged? Or do we get more compliance by those in authority? I would love to see that put to the test, because if this is Premier Kenney saying, look, this is all about safety, this is all about fighting the virus, this is all about curbing positive caseloads, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If that kind of a social justice gathering happened in Edmonton, do the police come in whack 'em and stack 'em mode, or do they come in to bend the knee yet again?
Well, I think we're going to find out when we see the usual suspects come out for their pro-Palestinian marches, now that there is a flare-up of tensions in the Middle East, for lack of a better term. So we are going to see the anti-American, pro-Palestinian people out in full force. And I say anti-American because so many of these America haters don't know why they hate Israel. They just know they hate them because they see them as an extension of America and American values. And so we're going to see them out there. Oh, they're probably going to be in front of Israeli businesses or Jewish-owned businesses. In the case of probably Toronto, they're going to be in front of the consulate there. And so I think we're going to see, are they going to be arresting those people and dispersing them? I doubt it. I seriously doubt it. This is just about quelling lockdown protests.
Well, Sheila, I don't know what the answer will be in Alberta, but I do have the answer for right here in Hogtown. No, the answer is they will not be arrested and ticketed and thrown into paddy wagons. Our good friend at the Toronto Sun has a must-read column today. Equal enforcement ignored. These are the pro-Hamas types demonstrating in front of the Israeli consulate in downtown Toronto. That occurred on Monday afternoon. And the police just stood there twiddling their thumbs. And regular viewers of this news service know that we've been going down for more than a year to cover the anti-lockdown protesters. For most part, things were tolerated until January. First, Nathan Phillips Square was declared a no-go zone. In fact, the protesters don't even congregate there. They go to Queen's Park. Oh, and by the way, when I say protesters, I mean the anti-lockdown protesters, because we saw, I think it was back in February or March, Sheila, we happened by Nathan Phillips Square, and there were protesters waving the Tamil Tigers flag. The Tamil Tigers have been declared a terrorist organization in 34 countries, including Canada. And the police, nothing to see here, folks. And here we have more pro-terrorism protesters in downtown Toronto. Again, the police, nothing to see here. And we're going to see this play out again on Saturday. May 15, folks, is a big around the world anti-lockdown protest in all the major cities, including Toronto. It just so happens that Queen's Park is just about a kilometer or so away from the Israeli consulate. And they're going to be gathering there, the pro-Hamas people. And I'm going to just query the police. Why is this being tolerated, this double standard? We intercepted a message, as you know, Sheila, through the police radio when it came to arresting anti-lockdown demonstrators. Target anyone with a sign. Target anyone with a flag. Can you believe it? A Canadian flag. Yeah, you can't show that on the grounds of the Ontario legislature, but you can show a Tamil Tiger terrorist flag at Yonge Dundas Square. Joe Warmington, he reached out to the city and he reached out to the police. Why is this being tolerated? So far, well, at least at press time, nobody got back to them. Because how do you justify the unjustifiable, Sheila?
Well, you can't. You can't. All of this is politically motivated. All of it. I mean, just the other day, the CDC comes out and says, actually, it's less than 0.1% of coronavirus cases are happening through casual contact outdoors. But, okay, so why are protests outlawed? Why is outdoor dining outlawed? Why are there curfews in Quebec? Why are there stay-at-home orders? None of this makes any sense. The virus apparently breaks down political lines. They want us to follow the science, and I'm trying, and I think I am. So why aren't they?
But this is, Sheila, this is precisely the point. As you said, of course this is all politically motivated. Of course there's a different standard for Tamil Tiger terrorist supporters and Hamas supporters and Black Lives Matter supporters as opposed to anti-lockdown demonstrators. But we have been told since day one, everything is being based on the science. And science is politically blind. It doesn't matter. Science should be apolitical, 100%. But it isn't today. It's not. It's completely politicized. I mean, there's a term called political science. There's nothing scientific about political science. So I guess what I'm asking for, and maybe I'm being naive here, can we at least have some honesty from those in charge? Can we at least have them say, yeah, you know what, it's really not about the science. There's some sensitivities at play, yada, yada, yada. But we don't get that.
No. I think there's a clip of Bonnie Henry saying that the lockdowns are based on what people wanted and not on the science. I know Drea uses it quite frequently in her videos because it was like for a moment, the mask slipped, like the veil slid off, and they were actually telling the truth and telling us what this is really all about. And when they say it's what the people wanted, I'm not even so sure it's what the people wanted. It's about what the government workers want. And that seems to be the only people the government listens to, not the rest of us who pay for all the government workers. I think there's going to be a hard reckoning for a lot of politicians in all of this. I think for Jason Kenney, it's going to come a lot sooner rather than later. It's already started. And I hope in the end of this that there are mechanisms put in place to stop these public health officers from doing the things that they've done and stop politicians from arbitrarily enacting laws that take away people's liberty in the instance of Chris Scott and Pastor Art Pawlowski without ever having to put it towards the people in the legislature. The law that passed, or not the law, but the restraining order that is put in place that strips all of us of our civil liberties here in Alberta, that was never argued before the legislature. It was done using a sneaky backdoor mechanism to increase the penalties on people who are protesting the government. Our liberties are being taken away, and there's nobody that we can hold to account directly right now for it.
You know, Sheila, I want to go back to what you said there. You're saying out in British Columbia, Bonnie Henry is saying this is what the people... Miss Henry has a winery, doesn't she, that's exempt from the lockdown? So she has the utter audacity to say the good, hardworking, law-abiding, honest people of British Columbia whose businesses are going under, who have lost their jobs and lost their homes, they want my winery to remain open and not restricted. She's saying that with a straight face? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, Drea uses that clip all the time in her videos where Bonnie Henry, for a moment's bit of honesty, says that, the lockdowns are based on, what people are asking for.
Unbelievable. Well, Sheila, I'm sure we must have some super chats, hyper chats, communicates, whatever super kitchens. What are those other things called? Libraries?
I don't know. Libraries. Things people sent us on a pigeon's leg. It's just
that I can get my head around. We were talking about crypto in the morning meeting today. I was educated until today. I thought crypto was Superman's dog, but evidently it's some kind of currency of which I have very little understanding of.
I know. It's one of those things I know I must immediately learn about. Like, I know that if I want to stay on ahead of the game, I must take a moment and learn about it, but I can't. I'm not there yet, and I know I know I'm gonna have to cram for the exam, but I'm leaving it for the last minute. That's how I feel about crypto. I know I must learn, and I should learn, and it would be good for me to learn, but I'm gonna cram at the last minute.
There you go.
Okay, we got to get to some of these chats, I guess. We've got one from Super U. ZenAX. Oh, you're from YouTube. I'm so glad to see you over there, ZenAX. It's ironic and sad that Alberta went from the freest to one of the most tyrannical provinces. Yeah, and they did that in the span of the pandemic. At the beginning of the pandemic, we were made in the shade. We were looking at Ontario and saying, that's not us. And now we're worse. Now we are worse. We don't have the stay-at-home orders, but what's the difference if you can't go outside and protest the government? I mean, really? I mean, we were looking at Quebec and saying, oh, you guys have a curfew. Look at you losers. And then our government is like, no, you can't protest this or we'll literally take you to jail. And we're locking up pastors. There's a third one with the potential to be locked up, Pastor Tim Stevens in Calgary. So, I mean, yeah, at the beginning of this, Jason Kenney patted himself on the back and said, we're taking a South Dakotan approach to all of this. I don't know. They're having a lot of rodeos in South Dakota right now, and we're ticketing people for holding them here.
So the question, Sheila, is what changed? What moved the needle on Premier Kenney's compass to do this 180?
Yeah, I don't know. I would love to know. I would love to know because there's a serious breakdown happening in that party, where the people are Todd Lowen probably just nuked all of his political prospects going forward within the UCP. If he runs as an independent, he'll get elected. They love him up there. He's a northern rural MLA. But I don't think there's a future for him going forward in the UCP if Jason Kenney stays on. But that's what a man of principle does. Yeah. We've got an Odyssey hyper chat from Wendy Walk. Says shout out to Justin. Wonderful. Once again, randomly selected by Justin, of course. Odyssey from TubeU says secret restraining order issued by the court without informing the people against who it is. Why should it be secret? They lost all credibility to lecture other countries that lock people up on a whim. Yeah, isn't that the truth? Yeah. I mean, they snuck around in secret. And as Chad points out, they literally had an email exchange the day before saying, I'm Chad Williamson from Williamson Law representing Chris Scott. And so instead of including Chad, who they know how to get a hold of, they snuck around in secret to see a judge and get a restraining order against Chris Glenn and the rights of all Albertans. And I frankly think, Glenn, I love you if you're watching, but I think it's only a matter of time before you're in jail too.
Yep.
Super U from Mimi Rose of Sharon says, thanks for standing for freedom. Well, we couldn't do it without the support of everybody at home. I mean, especially in Alberta here, just fighting that restraining order could cost $100,000. If they're unsuccessful today and it has to go to the appeals court, $100,000. So if people are so inclined to donate, they can do that at fightthefines.com. Especially right now, if you can't leave us a super chat, might I suggest you donate to fightthefines.com. And the good news is if you make any donations to fightthefines.com, you'll qualify for a charitable tax receipt through the Democracy Fund, which is a registered Canadian charity that works to support the civil liberties of Canadians. Yep. Odyssey chat again, Rebecca Henderson. I called my MPP Sam Oosterhoff about my 12-year-old cousin being suicidal for months, and his response was, nobody likes the lockdowns.
Wow.
Wait, there's more. Sam Oosterhoff, doesn't like the lockdowns either. That's why he had that big family gathering in contravention of the lockdowns. Remember that? And he didn't resign. He didn't really apologize. It was just like, well, that's fine. It was just me. Nobody likes shoveling their driveway at 6 a.m. or getting stuck in traffic. There's a difference between not liking something and being angry about an injustice.
Yeah, Sam Oosterhoff, there's a piece of work. This is the fellow that I think it might have been 2 years ago. He phoned the police on some little old ladies that came to his constituency office that were, protesting about library cuts, if I believe. Again, I think around the same time, Efren and I went down to cover a anti-abortion and pro-abortion protest, dueling protests on the lawns of Queen's Park. By the way, folks, can you possibly guess which group was so loving to deal with and eloquent and made great points, and which group was just screaming words that rhyme with duck and begin with the F word, the F initial, and were getting quasi-violent? And Sam Oosterhoff was there, and he shunned us. I mean, he is obviously a pro-life person, and he had no time for us. So this kid is really, I think, a big disappointment, Sheila. And, it was the church that got him elected, right? In his writing, he came out of nowhere, but wow, I'm looking at a lot of cowardice there when that guy should be a man of principle, you would think.
You would think. And I remember when he had that big family gathering that broke the lockdown.
Yeah.
At the same time, you're out there fighting for people getting lockdown tickets because of the rules his own government enacted. And a lot of people were saying, well, it's pretty obvious he doesn't like the lockdown. Yeah, I get that. I hate it too. But you know what I'm doing? I'm fighting to have it changed. Instead, he did nothing. He turtled. It's one thing to be against the lockdown, but when you're a politician, you have the ability to change it. What was he doing to change it? He never said anything. He was just doing things sneakily. And that's what I have a real problem with. Yeah, I mean, if you're against the lockdown, be against the lockdown and fight for the people who are being punished by the lockdown. But he's not doing any of that.
Yeah, and in certain respects, Sheila, maybe Sammy was ahead of the curve. I'm thinking of Rod Phillips, the former finance minister of Ontario, who had to resign in disgrace, who buggered off to St. Bart's during the Christmas holiday period, and yet had the audacity. This is what makes his story so exceptional, because there were other MPPs and MPs and MLAs also going to sunny destinations during the Christmas break. But Mr. Phillips went one step further. He pre-recorded fireside chats pretending to be in Ajax, wearing a turtleneck sweater when he was on a beach getting the tanning butter applied to his back. And, I mean, to me, Sheila, that's like they're rubbing our faces in it, aren't they?
Yeah, the nerve of these people, like Aloha Allard in Alberta. She's off in Hawaii. The rest of us are canceling Christmas. And she goes, well, but it was allowed. Yeah, it was allowed. But what about the rest of us who can't afford to go to Hawaii because you closed our businesses?
Yep.
We're not even allowed to visit with each other while you're jetting off to Hawaii. And then she has the audacity to say, well, it's a family tradition. And so we didn't want to,
well,
we didn't want to
different then.
Like my family tradition is seeing my family, but that's okay. Whatever. You do you.
And
people.
And my theory too, Sheila, is that all of these politicians were tipped off with some insider knowledge that it wouldn't be until January when those quarantine hotels would come into play. So if you want to get to that sun in the fun destination, go in December, because come January the rules are changing. Unbelievable. Always good to have some insider knowledge, isn't it, Sheila?
Yeah. Come January, you're going to get abducted into Justin Trudeau's rape hostels. So go and have your family vacation now after you lock us all down. And they think we're supposed to be happy about it. Oh, we're all in this together.
We're all in this
Unless
together.
I'm sucking on a Mai Tai right beside you on a lawn chair, we're not all in this together, sister. Yeah. Okie dokie. I got a little mad there. Okay, anyways, we got a Super U chat from Jack M. What judge signed the order? Is the Health Act able to supersede the charter? Well, the judge that signed the order was associate or assistant. I forget. Chief Justice Rook in Calgary. And actually, if you go on our Rebel News story about the emergency injunction that they got, we've published the document in full there, so you can read it for yourself and see how you are also being restricted, even though you're completely innocent. And reminding your own business, the province got a restraining order against you too. We've got a hyper chat here of one library from History Club World, and he spends his library promoting himself, which is, a good spend of the marketing dollar. He says, History Club World on Instagram, your hub for educational content. A question for the two hosts. What is your favorite Canadian Prime Minister and favorite USA President? David, you go first.
Wow. For the U.S. president, I got to tell you, I'm already pining for Donald Trump. I think he was the best U.S. president since Ronald Reagan, who did so much. For Canadian Prime Minister, I got to go, and I'm talking about in my lifetime, when I was an adult. Much like Trump, I pine for Stephen Harper. I could never see any of these shenanigans happening under the leadership of Stephen Harper. I thought he brought great governance to this country. I fully invest into those bumper stickers and T-shirts that I see where it's Stephen Harper's image and the words, "Miss me yet?" Oh boy, do I miss you. So those would be my answers. And I mean, and of course, in America, pre my lifetime, well, Abraham Lincoln, of course. So Sheila, what would be your choices?
Okay, I guess I'll start with the Americans. I normally, 5 years ago, I would have said Reagan. 4 years ago, I would have said Reagan. I wasn't on the Trump bandwagon from the very beginning, but for me, on the issues that I care about, it has to be Trump. He, though I wasn't fully convinced that he was a conservative, boy, he sure governed like one. Most pro-life president in my lifetime. Spoke at the March for Life. Peace in the Middle East. We can see that unraveling right now.
Yep.
Unprecedented time of peace in the Middle East. Peace accords between enemies. Lowest unemployment rate for minorities. Which I think is incredible. Energy independence, again, things that I care about. And the media crying daily. That is also something I care deeply about. We never saw a Republican really treat the media as the enemy that they are. And he did that.
And Sheila, that's a good point about peace in the Middle East. If Donald Trump had any other surname aside from Trump, he would have the Nobel Peace Prize for what's happening.
You better believe it.
And the proof is in the pudding with the weakling in the White House right now and how the Middle East is unraveling and how the White House is going out, the Biden administration, I should say, to somehow again appease Iran, the biggest state sponsor of terrorism, by bending the knee, offering financial compensation. I cannot understand what is going on with that agenda, which Trump ended the previous disastrous Obama arrangement with Iran, and now Biden's going out of his way to go back to disaster mode. It's baffling, Sheila.
Yep. So, yeah, I guess my favorite president is Trump at this point. And then as far as Canadian prime ministers, I'm a Westerner. So I got to go with the first Western Prime Minister, Diefenbaker. He gave Indigenous people full rights and unashamed, unabashed, proud Canadian identity that was intrinsically linked with freedom and human rights. So I've got to go with Diefenbaker. And Stephen Harper agrees with me because Diefenbaker was his favorite prime minister.
Of course, how could I forget Diefenbaker? And he came across to many people as cold, but I got to tell you, Google the video of Diefenbaker reacting to Paul Henderson's winning goal in the 1972 Summit
Dief the Chief.
It's classic, right? But Diefenbaker comes alive, right?
You know what, though? That's, I think, an overlay between Diefenbaker and Stephen Harper is that, they had this, boring, studious sort of accountant sort of exterior, but you knew they were kind of fun and on their own time in the things that they liked, but running the country is serious business. And you can see that when you have a clown who doesn't take the job seriously, you get what you get right now. That's Justin Trudeau. And he cares more about outward appearances than the hard work of running the day-to-day operations of a major, mature country in the world.
You're so right. When we saw the softer side of Stephen Harper, and by that I'm meaning that time, I think it was around Christmas time, he got behind the piano and he was playing Sweet Caroline. That was really, really good. It was a great rendition, although the media condemned him for that, of course. But, in that way, Stephen Harper was kind of like Donald Trump light in terms of the media versus the man in charge. It was a precursor to come for the 4 years of mainstream media disgrace in terms of what President Trump was receiving. I have high energy Andrew says at the window doing some like chimpanzee movements or something, Sheila. So forgive me if I'm distracted. He often does that, but carry on.
Is he having a stroke or something? Can you tell him to chill out? Tell him I'm bringing beef jerky when I see him next. Just calm down.
I've got high energy Adam says doing aerobics, and I've got Yankee talking, which makes me feel like I'm in the interior of Big Ben at the stroke of noon. You know what I'm saying? A bong, bong.
Okay, we got to wrap this up because I got to get out of here in 5 minutes. Okay, got a hyper chat of 1.69 libraries. Wendy Walk says, trying to figure out this tip thing. I think I have finally figured it out. Shout out to Justin. People are sending hyper chats just to shout out to Justin. That's kind of great. Good. Yeah, Justin, you're going to become like a library hundredaire if it keeps going like this. We've got another 5 libraries from Sue J. Ann Grant, SG. Love the whole Rebel team. Well, thank you very much. I'm sorry I butchered your name, even though you were generous with your libraries. We've got another 0.43 libraries. All fiat currencies go to zero. Crypto is the future of currency. Here's some more Superman's dog. Cryptocurrency.
We all remember Superman's dog's name, but you know what, Sheila? No one remembers the name of Super Monkey or Super Cat or Super Horse, but they're all out there.
Super Monkey.
That's Beppo.
Is it?
Yes. And Scratchy is the cat.
You know, my son gave me a Mother's Day card with Wonder Woman on it, and I opened it and I was like, if Mrs. Menzies doesn't get a ridiculous card like this, what kind of man is that David Menzies?
I got her one of those high-end cards, and what I always do, Sheila, is that on the back, that's where the price is. It was $8.99. And I circled it in red ink because I want you to make sure this isn't something from Dollarama, baby. And it was a beautiful photograph of a dog with its head out the window of a moving car, because our dog is a statistical anomaly. It hates to put its head out of a window. It's the only dog, I think, on the planet that acts that way. And I said something, I wish I could have the funds to buy you a normal dog that puts its head out the window, but I can't. So here's a photo of one. But you got
my dog barks at the wind, and she loves to go in the car, and she loves to go like on the Rhino with us and the ATVs. But it's so annoying because she gets on there and she doesn't bark ever. Like someone could come in and rob us, and she would just like go lay down somewhere. She's not a barker. But you get her on the ATV, and all she does is bark as soon as the wind comes, and it's the worst. So careful what you wish for about dogs liking wind.
And by the way, Sheila, how much was the Wonder Woman card that your kids gave you?
I didn't look.
Oh, you did?
Ignorant.
Oh, no. I'm calling BS on that. The first thing I do whenever I'm given a card, I look at the back. Absolutely, even before I open and see the message.
David, that is unbelievably rude.
I'm just an honest man. We all do it. I
do not.
I don't believe it.
It's unbelievably rude. I'm never getting you a card. Never.
Don't believe her, folks. Okay.
And we've got another Super U from Trini Canadian. Why would the police ticket freedom protesters, but they give an escort to the environmentalists in BC? Yeah. What a great point. Those cops in BC, it was like they were acting as a private security for the environmental protesters in Drea's video from last week. And yet, they've got to hold church in the open air in BC because you can't have church there.
Wasn't that video something, Sheila? And that woke female cop talking to Drea in a tone that is reminiscent of how a principal talks to an elementary school child, saying, and I'm paraphrasing, your line of questioning is kind of aggressive, like, what line of questioning would that be, officer? Why have you come out for this demonstration? What are you hoping to achieve here? Can you imagine? It's so pathetic, Sheila.
Any question that wasn't completely friendly, I think that cop would have interpreted as highly aggressive.
Wow.
That's how you taser kids skating. That kind of interpretation of what aggressive is or isn't is how you end up tasering kids.
Yep.
We've got one more chat from Odyssey. The super cat was Streaky and the horse was Comet. Is that
That's
true?
Right. That is right. The cat was Streaky, but the horse is not from the planet Krypton. He's a reincarnated Greek mythology animal. So technically, the horse is not really part of the Superman family. I know that's very important.
Why was the cat called Streaky?
Oh, because DC Comics, before Marvel came around, they were just mailing in the scripts, Sheila. They didn't really care. It was so bad.
My cat's name is Margaret Scratcher. And so when we go to the vet, when the vet will call, because we just call her Maggie if we're calling her, if she's out at night or whatever. But when the vet calls to say, Maggie's overdue for her shots or whatever, the vet uses her full name, Margaret Scratcher. Margaret Scratcher's overdue for her shots.
That's fine. If I ever had a cat, the name would be Jones, named after the cat in the 1979 classic movie Alien, because Jones was the only thing smart enough to get its ass out of that spaceship and into a hiding place so that it wouldn't be the next meal, right? So, thumbs up to Jones.
Okay. We got one more hyper chat, and then I got to hang up because I got to get out of here. We've got a hyper chat of one library from 5T0N3D-G4M3R. Okie doke. Better to die standing on your knees than live crouching on your knees. Or standing on your feet than live crouching on your knees.
There you go. And Sheila is true to her word, folks. She's got to get on a plane soon. So, on the behalf of our producer, Justin, Sheila, Gunn, Reid, and myself, David Menzies, we'll see you next time on Tuesday. In the meantime, stay sane.